Hi, I'm Jack Draper. Shout out to QualityShot Tennis.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It is preview and prediction time, and it's for the ATP Madrid Open final between Carlos Alcaraz and Jan-Lennard Struff. Now, a lot of you will be thinking, Jan-Lennard Struff? If you haven't been watching much of the Madrid Open, that may be a big surprise to you, and I think it's a big surprise to everyone, but a pleasant surprise. He is a big serving, big hitting German, and with a lot of talent as well. He, hasn't maybe had the career so far that he would have liked, but this is a really, really positive step in the right direction. Carlos Alcaraz, the defending champion, of course, won Madrid last year, so he's looking to go back-to-back after going back-to-back in Barcelona. So this is a really, really intriguing matchup. Alcaraz is the overwhelming favorite, I think we have to say, and he will go into it, the massive favorite, of course, but there is quite a lot that Jan-Lennard Struff brings to the table, and we will talk about him in a bit more detail. I saw him live and was lucky to see him live last year at Wimbledon, or actually 2 years ago at Wimbledon, and play Daniel Medvedev. And there are some things that I remember thinking at the time when I saw him, and I think that's coming to fruition now. Before we get into it, though, remember to that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and also do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Liking and subscribing really helps the algorithm, so do click that like button. Do hit the red button to subscribe if you're new as well. Over 70% of you are still not subscribed, so get on that and become part of the QualityShot community. Okay, let's get into it. So Carlos Alcaraz, as I said, is the favorite. So what we're going to do is go over their matches throughout the week and a half in Madrid so far for both players. Then I'll talk about any matches between the two as well, if there are any. And then on top of that, we will break down tactically and technically what I think might play out in the final, what to look out for, and then ultimately I'll give you guys my prediction as well. So for Carlos Alcaraz, his route has been pretty good. His hardest match actually came in his opening match against Emil Ruusuvuori, who has a relatively similar game to Jan-Lennard Struff. I would say Ruusuvuori, Khachanov, to be fair, Coric as well, all three of those players, even Zverev, actually, I mean, to be honest with you, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 big serving and somewhat big hitting players as well. And Jan-Lennard Struff is in a pretty similar mold to those 4 players. Dimitrov is different. He's, more of a, you might say, has a bit more flair and is a playmaker from the back of the court, baseline power hitter, has a bit more finesse to his game than some of these players. Not big serving either. So Alcaraz has the fortune, I think, of playing some of these players who actually have a similar game style to Struff. But anyway, all straight set victories. You can see here 3 sets against Emil Ruusuvuori, which if I was Struff, I would look at that match. And I said it when I did the Zverev Alcaraz preview, that if I was Zverev, I would look at that match. I don't think he did. But Ruusuvuori had some good success against Alcaraz, taking a set off him. But Alcaraz then beat Dimitrov, Zverev, Khachanov, and Coric all in straight sets. For Jan-Lennard Struff, he's had a fantastic run. He played the qualifiers actually first, by the way, and he is the first lucky loser to make a Masters 1000 final. I mean, incredible. So he beat Nardi, and then lost to Karatsev in the second round of qualifying. He, of course, avenged that loss in the semi-finals of Madrid. So that's interesting, of course. Lost to Karatsev and then beat him in the same tournament. But anyway, he beat Sonego, Shelton. Sonego in straight sets, Shelton in 3, Lejovic in 3, who was in great form, of course, winning the Belgrade tournament, beating the Bosnia tournament, beating Djokovic on the way to that title, cash in, and then Tsitsipas was a fantastic win by Struff, and then beat Karatsev, got revenge over him after losing to him, of course, in the qualifiers in 3 sets. In terms of matches between the two, well, they actually did play. They have played twice. Once on clay, which was very, very straightforward to Jan-Lennard Struff, in fact. Now, that was in 2021. So 2 years ago, he won 6-4, 7-6, 6-2. Alcaraz, of course, was a baby then. Not literally. And then at Wimbledon, Jan-Lennard Struff lost in 5 sets to Carlos Alcaraz. And Alcaraz won 4-6, 7-5, 4-6, 7-6, 6-4. So he came back from 2-1 down to beat him in the end in 5 sets. Of course, Alcaraz then went on to make the round of 16 and lose in the end to Jannik Sinner. But yeah, Struff clearly does have a game that could trouble a lot of these players. He also has a 3-all head-to-head against someone like Tsitsipas. So he does have, as I said, a very effective game against some of the top players on tour. I think his biggest issue has been consistency, which really does, in my opinion, is one of the biggest factors. Consistency and mentality are the two biggest factors that really set the elite players. They really set the elite players apart from the rest of the field. And I think that's something that Struff has definitely lacked, especially consistency, I think, for me, in terms of his game. So how does it play out? Well, I think if you have been watching tennis for the past year and a half, you know what Alcaraz brings to the table. We can very, very quickly talk about that briefly, and then we'll more focus on Struff because I think, I'm more interested to talk about what he brings to the table and then how that gels with Alcaraz and what we might end up seeing. So we know Alcaraz, his serve is still a bit of a work in progress, of course, but it is getting there. Has been serving quite a few aces in this tournament as well. Had a really good serving tournament at the US Open. He is making positive steps towards, a really elite serve. He's not quite there yet, but he's getting there. His second serve, or the kick serve, even on the first serve from the ad side, very effective, especially on clay. He manages to try and drag his opponents out, and also will come and serve and volley at times, either on the second serve, the kick serve, and very effectively because he transitions beautifully. Fantastic hands at the net, generally speaking, volleys very well. And on top of that, when talking about touch, he's got arguably the best drop shot on tour. The forehand is a massive weapon, we know, and, I think he can hit it in so many different ways. He can hit it flatter. He can hit it more kind of Rafa Nadal-esque with a lot of topspin, a lot of whip. And, he can also hit with more depth but less pace as well. And even hit the forehand slice at times as well, especially on the stretch, a more defensive forehand. So forehand has lots of different layers to it. And one of the opponents that played Alcaraz recently said that every ball that you get from Alcaraz, each shot that you get in return, each ball that you get back is different from the previous shot in terms of either spin or speed or just, the way that it comes onto the racket, and it makes it very hard to get a rhythm against him. His backhand is, actually, before we finish on his forehand, by the way, can be on and off. Generally speaking, it's very good, but he does go through moments, and probably because of his age, he's only 20 years old, but he does go through patches in matches, which rhymes, and no pun intended, where it can be quite inconsistent. He can make a lot of mistakes on it. We saw that against Rusevori especially, but once he's warmed up into a tournament, it doesn't tend to then fall away. So that might be the only thing that Jan-Lennard Struff might not be able to capitalize on that in this final, because I do feel like Alcaraz will step up, and I don't think he's going to have a particularly bad forehand. The backhand is very solid for the most part. He will hit the backhand slice at times as well as variation, and the backhand, I think, on clay especially is very good defensively. I think he's a lot more solid on that side. He can maybe struggle with the backhand in terms of defending that backhand corner when it comes to other surfaces. And then, of course, he's got the into-out and into-in forehand where he runs around the backhand beautifully. Great movement around the surface, slides extremely well, and moves naturally on the surface, easily able to chase down balls, and defensively is incredible. Arguably that one of the best athletes or defenders on tour at the moment. Makes you play 2-3 extra shots at times. So that's kind of a quick breakdown of Alcaraz, his game, and also on clay. And I think we can also finally finish up by saying his return. He's a natural returner, but he can be wasteful at times, and that's something that we'll talk about a bit more about when we talk about Struff and his serve, because I do think Alcaraz needs to be careful against Jan-Lennard Struff, because I don't think he's the type of player that's going to give you a huge amount of free points. So let's then talk about Jan-Lennard Struff now. He has a very big game. He does. He hit a whole load of aces against Karatsev, and this surface in Madrid with the altitude, it is a quicker surface. We saw today with Sabalenka beating Swiatek, which arguably, if it's Rome or Roland Garros and it's a slower clay court, even Stuttgart was indoors, so it's slightly quicker, but it's still slower, the actual surface. Swiatek beat her in straight sets there, but then in Madrid today, Sabalenka beat her in 3 sets, and she served extremely well. Jan-Lennard Struff, though, hit 15 aces against Karatsev the other day. Now, Karatsev is not as good a returner as Alcaraz, but that's phenomenal on a clay court. It's very, very good. Against Tsitsipas over 3 sets, he hit 14 aces. So, we're talking about someone who's consistently hitting double digits when it comes to aces on a clay court. That's not including unreturnable serves. So, for me, that's a real positive sign for Jan-Lennard Struff. And against Karatsev, it's only serving at 59% first serves in. If he can get that number up a little bit against Alcaraz, it's going to be very hard for Alcaraz to break him. And, he at least then guarantees himself a tiebreaker potentially in those sets. And that's a real positive. What I would say is he needs to hit his spots against Alcaraz, no doubt. He needs to serve a high percentage of first serves in. I do like the fact that he is also willing to come to the net at times as well. He doesn't just charge the net. He probably won't come to the net as much as Alcaraz, but he is a pretty natural volleyer as well from what I've seen. And he needs to try and serve very efficiently against Alcaraz. Get him on the stretch, get him uncomfortable. And, I don't think Alcaraz necessarily has a weaker side for return. I think his forehand and backhand return are pretty even, pretty solid. But I think he does need to have a bit of variation in Struff and try and make sure that not only is he hitting his spots and getting those 3 points, unreturnables. One thing that Emil Rusevori did very well was serve massive into corners, hitting his spots and against Alcaraz. And I think the first set of that match, he was serving at 75% unreturnable serves, which is ridiculous. If Struff can do something similar, it's going to be very hard for Alcaraz throughout the match. But, even if he's able to just back up that first serve as well beautifully with the +1 plays and make sure that he's trying to hit as many forehands as possible. He's got big weapons from the back of the court, Jan-Lennard Struff as well. Yes, he may make some mistakes at times, but he needs to be proactive, I think, because if I was Jan-Lennard Struff's coach, I would say there is no point in you playing passively or trying to, hit with Alcaraz from the back of the court and also, try and see whether you can break him down in longer rallies, because you're not going to win those rallies. You're going to win the rallies where you're the one being the aggressor on the front foot trying to dictate proceedings. And the only way that Struff can do that is by getting on the front foot on the forehand as soon as possible and trying to attack Alcaraz. I would utilize the into-out forehand a lot. I think Alcaraz is maybe not as good defending on the stretch on the backhand side as he is on the forehand side on the stretch defending. And I would utilize that into-out forehand, as much as possible. And then also I would try and transition and come to the net. You have to be careful with Alcaraz. I probably wouldn't approach the forehand, but he also has a very good passing shot on the backhand side as well, especially down the line. But I would choose my moments and come to the net because Alcaraz is very dangerous when it comes to passing shots. I would also try and utilize a drop shot. Now, Jan-Lennard Struff, doesn't have an Alcaraz-esque type drop shot, but if I'm Struff and I'm pushing Alcaraz back, I would try and utilize that, because Alcaraz will be very far back, especially if he's defending a lot. That's a really good way to get him to, give him a different look to think about, different thing to think about as well. Where Alcaraz is not just thinking, okay, I can try and, predict where Struff's going to go and I can go laterally, but actually I have to think about going backwards or forwards depending on whether he's going to play a drop shot as well. So throw an extra spanner in the works. But yeah, I think that a lot of things need to go right for Struff to win this, in all honesty. But he does have the game that if he's on and he's playing really, really well, then it's going to be a very competitive final. Now, when we talk about the return of Jan-Lennard Struff against the serve of Alcaraz, actually, before we do, let's just talk about Alcaraz's return. Now, I did say that he can be wasteful at times, and that's why I think Struff, if he serves as well as he has been doing, I think he can have quite a few comfortable service games. Now, when we talk about Alcaraz's serve, he's been serving pretty well at times as well in this tournament. What I would say, though, is that Alcaraz's second serve, despite it being a good kicker, I do think Struff, being as tall as he is, he should be able to get on top of that pretty easily. And he needs to make sure that he's not being wasteful on return. He's not the most incredible returner, Jan-Lennard Struff, but if he can try and make inroads into the Alcaraz serve and make him uncomfortable, then it's a big advantage because Alcaraz will want to be on the front foot from the first shot after serve, whether it's first serve or second serve, and he will close down the net quickly and he will fly through his service games if you're not careful. So something for Struff to think about. But, one thing that I think, we talk about forehand to forehand and backhand to backhand exchanges. How does that look? I think Jan-Lennard Struff tends to hit, from what I've seen of him in the past as well, on the clay, a more loopy kind of forehand, with a lot of topspin, trying to find good angles to drag out the opponents. Alcaraz, will then either in response hit that similar angle, or he might even go down the line. And that's where Struff needs to be careful because he does only be defending a lot on the backhand side. 98% of players are not fantastic at defending their backhand side because it's just your weaker side generally normally, and defending that side can be extremely tough against a whole load of firepower. The backhand to backhand exchanges, even though I said in the past, I don't think Alcaraz's defense on that side is as solid as his forehand. His backhand generally is very, very solid. Struff's backhand has been quite good from what I've seen him this week and a half. Can it hold up to Alcaraz? Probably not in terms of shot tolerance, but in terms of power, can Struff hit Alcaraz off the court? If he plays to the highest level possible that he is able to play to, yes, he could. He could, because these courts are quick enough. Yes, it's a clay court, but the balls do fly through, and we saw that today with Sabalenka. Now, we're talking about number one versus number two there. Struff is not number one or number two. We're talking about number two versus the world number 65. So, but Struff has not been playing like that. He's been playing like a top 10 player. So, I think if he puts his best foot forward, we could get a very competitive final. Do I think he's going to take a set of Alcaraz? He could do. If he serves extremely well, I don't see why not. And, he utilizes his big booming ground strokes and doesn't make a huge amount of errors and is calculated with his aggression, is very efficient when it comes to his net play, then why not? I could see it happening. When I saw him play against Medvedev at Wimbledon 2 years ago, and he took a set of Medvedev, and I just thought to myself, this guy, I'd never seen him play before. I have to be honest, I'd never seen him play before, and I saw him for the first time live. I actually thought to myself, this guy, like the way that he plays and his style and his ability, you could see, I actually thought to myself, how, one, have I never heard of him? And two, why is he not ranked higher? Because I'm not saying that he should be winning Grand Slams, but his level and his ability from the eye test was telling me that this guy should be top 20, top 30, at least. That's what it was telling me. So, I'm not massively surprised that he's managed to have such a good run here. I'm a little bit surprised at the consistency he's been able to show because it just seems like that's something he's really lacked. But it's great to see him get it to click. I think Alcaraz will win. I think it's very hard to pick against him, in all honesty. But, I would love to see Jan. If Struff was to win, I think it would be great for tennis, in all honesty. But I think Look, first Masters 1000 final for him as well. There's going to be nerves, but you have to factor that in. If it wasn't a Masters 1000 final, I might say Alcaraz would win in three, but because of the nerve factor as well, although does have nothing to lose, let's say Alcaraz in three. Alcaraz in three, Struff to take a set, maybe a tiebreaker, and yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting final for as long as it lasts. And if I was Jan-Lennard Struff, I would be just be coming out there playing the best aggressive tennis I can, because on the back foot, Alcaraz is going to have a field day because he can switch between defense and attack. Struff on the back foot, from what I've seen, he will hustle, but he doesn't have the defensive capabilities to handle Alcaraz's firepower. So he needs to try and keep the points short, in my opinion, anyway. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think is going to be the result, and who you think is going to win and why? Guys, remember that like button, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you on the next video.